The following is a presentation of Geekster Media.
Remember that show back then? Remember that show? Turn on the TV, time was always flying. Why did they have to end? So many shows you forgotten. Now that we've got a podcast, we can release all the shows from our hands. Yeah, will you be the most TV dudes you'll ever listen to? As long as we keep on talking sitcoms and cartoons from back in the day. Okay, we confess we're obsessed, but we got a podcast to help you remember that show. Hey there, TV lovers, and welcome to episode 40 of Remember That Show, the podcast where we revisit the obscure or forgotten TV shows of the 80s and 90s, or in this case, the future. Ready to have a really schway time with my Batman-loving co-host, I'm Adam.
And grooving to some bumpin' techno tracks while I wait to hear back from the Joker gang to see if I made the cut, I'm William Bruce West. This episode, we're looking beyond the present to see how the battle for justice evolved in Gotham City. But first, we have to travel back in time to our own TV-obsessed childhoods in a segment we call Theme Song.
Yes, indeed. So, Will, our series today provides some very futuristic visuals. So I have to ask, what piece of media gave you the most unforgettable vision of the future as a kid?
Star Trek? Really Star Trek The Next Generation, because when you really get down to it, it's one of the rare depictions of the future that's positive. Like, it's so far in the future. It's like, yeah, there were hardships, there were the Bell riots, there was all this stuff, but we're led to believe that by the next generation, like, Earth doesn't really care about like worldly possessions. They got rid of money, and like everybody has like a basic standard of living. Now we'd come to find out that's all a lie, and even the spin-offs now don't quite know how to deal with that. But like at the time, I mean, it was bright and colorful, and they're seeking out new worlds, while like everything else was like, well, after the rise of Neo-Tokyo, or like after World War III, or after the Robot War. Like, there's always something terrible, and we're just scrounging for scraps. But that wasn't the case in Star Trek. How about you?
The impact for me was definitely on home video, watching over and over again Back to the Future Part 2. Because I hadn't even seen the original as a kid. I started with Part 2, which basically catches you up anyway to, you know, what happened in the first film, because they have all the stuff where Marty goes back to the 50s again. That was a cool experience for me, because what did it have? It had everything that we've continuously been waiting for. It had hoverboards, it had hover converted cars, it had holographic billboards, it had robot gas station attendants, it had, you know, like so many interesting ideas for what you could get. And that was like a big deal for me, because I was just like, yeah, like it's going to be neon and everything's going to fly. I feel like that's all we were waiting for, was in the future, everything flies.
Yeah,
we'll see if that's the case with Batman Beyond or not.
Right. Well, as we've mentioned in the past, Batman the Animated Series was a groundbreaking moment for television animation in the early 90s that helped push the American cartoon world beyond the slapstick wackiness of Looney Tunes and the abject crappiness of Hanna-Barbera, paving the way for more serious storytelling in the medium. Showrunners Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, and Alan Burnett used this success to get a Superman animated series produced for the Kids WB network, and while not as well remembered, it was still a success. This super team of creators tried to pitch other DC Comics-based concepts for the next animated series project. As writer, Paul Dini explained to Wizard Magazine in 1998, "We've looked at pretty much every DC Comics property, and there are a lot of characters we'd like to work with. We worked up a development for a Catwoman solo show that we liked an awful lot. But what it comes down to is what the WB wants to buy. You're dealing with folks at the network who know Superman and Batman. Aquaman? Probably not. We're just dealing with a marketplace where there's very little experimentation. Adam, if you could have pitched a character or comic book for this group to develop for animation, who or what would it have been?
Like there was a lot of characters to choose from. Obviously, I was reading comics all throughout the 90s, so I was very well versed. There is a particular character that I feel like has never truly gotten the spotlight, although he did join the Justice League for a time. He has gotten an animated movie that came out probably like 10 years ago at this point, and they've kind of morphed him into more of like a gay icon. He's like an out superhero in the DC universe, or at least he was at the time. But it's a character called the Ray, and the Ray was essentially the son of a golden age superhero who had a really goofy costume. There's like a yellow, he looked like Big Bird, basically, like it was pretty bad. He has the powers of light. He can travel at the speed of light. He can create like hard light weapons and things like that. He is a character that was just fascinated with. He was one of the quote unquote new characters being introduced in the 90s comics at DC. He had a really cool helmet. He had an awesome jacket. It was kind of like, what if the Rocketeer had superpowers? I think that's what I was responding to. But I always just felt like the Ray had the potential to be the superhero with attitude, to be like, something that's like kind of like the cool teenage superhero, and that the light-based powers, he could always be facing off against all these other characters that want to bring darkness into the world. Like the themes felt like they would very easily be adapted to animation. So that's why I was always surprised he didn't get a bigger push, because he was so unknown. It felt like it would have been easy for some creative team to develop it and turn it into whatever they wanted. So my pitch would definitely have been for the Ray.
That's an interesting choice. I actually just picked up the full run of the Ray from a dollar box like a few weeks ago. He's in that era of DC where I was like, no new heroes. So like I like that you gave him that push. I don't know, like I'm trying to think of like, what would I have wanted back then and what do I want today? Like back then, I'm just like more Batman. Outside of the US, those episodes that we know of like the new Batman adventures are just called like Gotham Knights. And so like I would have wanted more of that, more of like the Bat family and them interacting, maybe some adventures without Batman, because they kind of do make Batgirl more important. And you see like Nightwing be brought into the fold. There's some episodes like Nightwing flirting with Catwoman, and that's weird because that's like hitting on your dad's old girlfriend, but they went there, so honestly I just wanted more of that. But what I think would have worked really well, and they could have stayed in the animation style but it wouldn't have been as like grounded, is a Plastic Man series, because you could almost freakazoid it. There's a lot of stuff you could do with him. He never really gets a push because like you put him on the Justice League and they're fighting aliens and he's like pretending he's Wonder Woman's bustier. It's just like tonally he doesn't work for the epic stuff, but he's a cartoon character right there.
My son was just asking me about Plastic Man the other day, and he's like, I think he saw something like on a YouTube short or something. He's like, it turns out like Plastic Man, I think he's like the most powerful hero. He's just so silly. He never uses his powers to the full extent, but he could be like the most deadly superhero. Is that true? I'm like, well, I mean, you're not wrong. And we were comparing him to Mr. Fantastic, and there was a Plastic Man cartoon in the 80s, which I loved. But I think you're right. If they had just been able to go like full wackiness like they were doing at that moment in time, you really could have dug deep into the well also, because I feel like you could have brought in other like C-tier DC heroes for him to team up with time and again. So yeah, that would have been a really fun show. And Steven Spielberg was trying to make a Plastic Man movie in the 90s with Jim Carrey. So that would have been the perfect, like, let's, seed the ground for the kids to know who Plastic Man is. And now here's a movie.
Like in my mind, it would be like the Bruce Timm animation, but it would be the tone of Teen Titans Go. Whereas now they would bring Plastic Man into Teen Titans Go, and you'd get a 12-minute cartoon of them laughing at how lame he is, But in, like 30 years ago, he'd have a whole series about how lame he is. Well, since the Kids WB executives weren't ready for DC Comics deep cuts and wanted to go back to the successful Batman well, they asked Tim, Burnett, and Dini to come up with a new concept starring a teenage Caped Crusader that would appeal to a younger audience than the original Batman animated series. According to Bruce Timm, it seemed so commercial and such a knockoff, but the more we started talking about it, the more excited we got about the show. The new villains in the more science fictional type setting, and then I did the drawing of the new Batman and I went, that is cool.
So it's interesting, right? Not on board initially, and then they're just like, well, maybe we have something here. However, from concept to the screen, the show evolved quite a bit. Now, as reported in Wizard Magazine in 1998, the show was originally announced with the title Batman Tomorrow, and the young protagonist was named Terry McGavin, which was later changed to McGinnis, who was described by Bruce Timm to be, quote, not quite as grim as Bruce Wayne was, but he's certainly not going to be Spider-Man. He's not going to be quite as closed-mouthed, short-sentence, beat the crap out of villains type of guy, but he will have a sense of humor. Now, in fact, the show itself was conceived to be, as Will was saying, quote, more lighthearted than the fans are used to, which ended up not being the case, as we'll get into. But one thing that was decided from the beginning and followed through on was something that was championed by Paul Dini. He said, quote, we're trying to get as far away from the old villains as we can. Now, this is with the exception of a street gang calling themselves the Jokers. But Dini was adamant that, quote, the other villains are all new and don't harken back in any way to the original Rogues Gallery. Those guys are all dead and forgotten. So with one or two exceptions, which again, we will get to, mostly all new characters, they were going to face off against this all new Batman. But Will, when you heard about these announcements, these rumors, were you excited for the idea of a Bat to the Future style show when it was announced in 98?
No.
Really?
Because when I saw the character designs, I'm very much especially when it comes to DC, I'm like, where's the cape? Because he kind of has the cape, but it's more like the webbing under Spider-Man's arms. It's not always out there. It's not a default part of the suit. So when you just see the suit at rest, it's like, where's the cape? That was my first thing. But also, you got to remember, we are at this point, 3 or 4 years after Spider-Man 2099. And, doing future versions of familiar things was not exactly old hat, but it wasn't groundbreaking either. And it always followed the same kind of it's sleek because everything in the future has to be sleek. No one's overweight or anything. It's a sleek body fitting tech suit. It was very much like in Deus Ex Machina. The suit can do a lot of stuff that is not laid out on a list, but whatever the episode calls for, it can do. Because at this point, I was kind of chasing the new Batman adventures because it wasn't being treated well, and I was trying to watch all those episodes because I'd kind of dropped out of Batman when Power Rangers came along, and there aren't that many of the new adventures, but also it was really created just as a companion show for Superman. It doesn't even have its own opening credits. There is boilerplate WB action kind of credit thing that blends them together. Hey, it's Superman as Batman, but there are no credits for the episodes with the new character designs. So I really wasn't ready to let go of that because I was still kind of fascinated by Joker's design doesn't have lips anymore and things like that. So it seemed like they were stopping that prematurely just to give us Batman 2099. I'd been there. And we'll talk about it in jeers, but I have a problem with all those approaches to a franchise.
Yeah, and we should say at this time, for whatever reason, Fox Kids Network was also developing a future superhero idea, which was a continuation of the Spider-Man animated series, which had also been canceled. But when they heard about Batman Beyond, they decided to change it to an alternate dimension story. They're like, we can't, because they were basically going to do Spider-Man 2099. And you even look at the costume of Spider-Man and Spider-Man Unlimited, it's just a different color scheme, but it's basically the Spider-Man 2099 costume. So you can see where they were headed and where they ended up. That show got canceled real quick. So it was one of those things where I think it just felt like somebody who was trying to ride the coattails of this show that actually did hit. But let's talk about that. What did the adventures of the Tomorrow Night look like when they finally made it to air? We'll find out in our elevator pitch. So Batman Beyond premiered on the Kids WB network in January of 1999 and ran for 3 seasons, ending in 2001, so that the showrunners could focus their attention on a Justice League cartoon. Now, Batman Beyond debuted with a 2-part pilot introducing teenager Terry McGinnis, voiced by Will Friedle, yes, from Boy Meets World, who lives in the Gotham City of 2039, where teenage problems have not evolved. He deals with girlfriends, bullying classmates, and parents not cutting him any slack. Terry's father is murdered by his evil boss at the Wayne Powers Corporation, Derek Powers, to silence the elder McGinnis after he accidentally obtained secrets of an illegal weapons operation. The teen feels helpless and yearns for justice, but lacks the means to obtain it by himself. One night after being chased by a gang of jokers out to the old Wayne Manor estate, Terry is saved Mr. Miyagi style, by an elderly Bruce Wayne, voiced once again by Kevin Conroy, who is worn out by the fight and requests Terry's help to return to the mansion. And while Wayne recuperates, Terry releases a bat from a grandfather clock, opening the secret entrance to the Batcave and revealing Wayne's former crime-fighting alter ego. Now, after the elderly billionaire refuses to use his abilities to solve the murder plot of Terry's father, the teen steals a futuristic bat suit worn by the Dark Knight in his later years and pursues the evil and eventually radioactive CEO as the self-appointed new Batman. Now, as Will was saying, there are many features of this suit. It has wings, it has jet boots that allow for flight, it enhances the wearer's strength, it can produce batarangs at will, it can turn invisible, and many, many other features are revealed throughout the series. One of which is a connection to the Batcave, where the 60-year-old Bruce Wayne acts as the man in the chair to his young protege, at first reluctantly, but eventually becoming a willing teammate to the new era of Batman protecting Gotham City. So, Will, you said you weren't looking forward to it, but did you watch Batman Beyond when it premiered in 99?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it premiered in prime time, and I always loved when Batman was in prime time. I taped it. I watched it that night, and I mean, it was dark. Like, it really needed to be in prime time. It wasn't one of those things of like, oh, it's for kids, but it works for adults. Like, when you see the scene of Bruce refusing to help and just listening as Terry gets the crap beat out of him as the suit shut down, you're like, wow, he's not the same. Like, there are shades of Dark Knight Frank Miller Bruce Wayne here, but this isn't the same guy. This is in a lot of ways, a worse guy. You know, like some stuff had happened since we've seen him, and he's just bitter and old, and it's just an old man with his dog, and it's kind of sad. But like, no, I watched that primetime thing, and I walked away from it just kind of like, wow, like, I don't know about that. Like,
yeah,
how does that translate to Saturday morning?
I mean, I think people thought that the original Batman the Animated Series was very serious. So to take it even a step further like they did here, it was shocking. Now, I will say, I was out of TV really by 1999 going into 2000. I was just kind of like, I'm a movie guy, I'm at the movie theater, I'm going to Blockbuster, I'm doing whatever. So like new TV wasn't something that I was pursuing. But in the year 2000, I started working at Disneyland, and I ended up on my breaks, you know, I worked Saturdays and stuff like that, and in my area at least, these were playing on Saturday mornings, the Batman Beyond, and so I would watch it like on my lunch or whatever, and I was probably watching the second season by that point, but I was just like, well, this is a pretty cool show. Like I would catch it, but I wasn't looking for it ever. And so like I probably saw like 2 or 3 episodes. I ended up seeing the backdoor pilot and eventual premiere of the spinoff, the Zeta Project. So somehow I knew all about that just from catching it, you know, in passing. But Batman Beyond, I always just thought cool design, but I don't know that I need this in my life right now. It just wasn't anything I was pursuing. But we got to tell the people, you know, we have a new Batman. The question remains, where was the old Batman for the past 20 years? in this timeline. So tell them about Bruce Wayne's last stand in the bat suit.
Well, in the opening of the pilot, we see an older Batman attempting to rescue a kidnapped woman. But in the middle of the action, he suffers a heart attack and is nearly killed by the criminals. The Dark Knight detective gathers up enough strength to fight back, but is so weak he has to resort to picking up a gun to scare away his attack. Having sworn off the use of guns after his parents' murder, Bruce is horrified at having to make such a choice and retires from his life as Batman. So for 2 decades, he lives secluded in Wayne Manor with his dog Ace, while the former Batgirl Barbara Gordon, voiced by Stockard Channing, takes over for her father as the new Commissioner Gordon. Eventually, there was a full-length animated feature film produced called Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker in the year 2000, which revealed another traumatic incident from the elder Batman's past, when Tim Drake Robin was captured, tortured, and brainwashed by the Joker and Harley Quinn. And even though Tim was rescued by Batman and Batgirl, with Joker and Harley presumed dead, the boy wonder chose to retire from crime fighting to pursue a normal life away from such dangers. Unfortunately, in the timeline of Batman Beyond, the Joker seemingly returns to the future Gotham City, and the mystery of his true identity must be solved. Now, before we move on, I gotta ask, have you seen Return of the... Well, let me ask this. Have you seen both versions of Return of the Joker?
I have the DVD version, so I definitely have seen a version, but I know that there is a more intense version.
Yes, because Joker dies in 2 different ways. In the DVD mass market edition, he gets electrocuted by just like stepping in some water while like his foot's entangled in a wire. But in the uncut version, Jason Todd shoots, well, Tim Drake, because I hate that whole thing.
Yeah. This is a mixing of A Death in the Family with
Right.
Batman Beyond.
Right.
Yeah.
Tim Drake shoots him with the bang gun, but the flag shoots out and it kills him. But there's more stuff in the uncut, like when there's a period of time where they're looking for Tim, so they're like casing Gotham City, so they go talk to some prostitutes down at the docks, you know, like those aren't in the normal version. So I always ask if people have seen like the uncut, like what it was meant to be and not what the studio made it turn into, basically.
Yeah, again, they were pursuing more adult themes on this show for sure.
Right. So now that you know the backstory, or is it Bat story? Let's find out what we liked about the series as we get into our cheers.
So, okay, we got to start where it starts. This is something you can't skip over when you watch the show. The techno theme song. Man, is that the coolest thing ever, those opening credits. It is intense. I mean, according to the producers, they said, like, we gave this guy, like, 9 Inch Nails and like showed him all these like cool bands of the time. We want this sound for our show. And it is so like MTV, like just like the cutting, like the effects that they put on everything. They seem to have these like 3D models of some of the characters that flip around and are all like distorted. Like it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I like the music. I mean, it took some adjustment because we were used to like all these like orchestral scores, and now we're getting Blade Runner music. You know what I mean? Like it was a transition. It works for the theme of the series. It's just kind of like, it was jarring at first, you know, because this, I hate to say this, but it's like they were really like nailing home, like, this ain't your granddaddy's Batman, you know? So,
yeah, because it says
worked.
like, you know, greed and corruption, like with these words just flash up on the screen. But then my favorite part, it always cracks me up, is it has like just a breakdown of people dancing in a nightclub. And it is so funny, like just the repeating animation. And there's this one guy in particular. There is a video for the Beavis and Butthead Do America Red Hot Chili Peppers song, Love Roller Coaster, where they do a breakdown of Beavis and Butthead dancing. And this guy looks like he's doing the Butthead dance to me. Like, it's so funny. But it was so like, isn't this cool? You go to a club, you dance to techno. And that's in the series too. I mean, this stuff happens. There's a lot of dances, you know. But it's a really, like, they released a full CD at the time of the show saying like, here's all the cool music that we created for the series. So that is definitely a plus in its favor. But I am most impressed. They totally created a universe in the way Gotham City looks. Every costume design in every episode is something new. Like they were on overtime in terms of if this was a real live action film, it would be like production design, but just their design work is beautiful. Like it's futuristic without being like crazy. Like there aren't flying cars, like Batman has a Batmobile plane type thing that he flies around in, but still people just drive cars and things in the universe. But so it's just futuristic enough. I was really blown away. I was just like, this took a lot of work. They couldn't like rely on anything they had designed in the past.
Oh yeah, but that was always what took me out of the Superman series, and we've talked about this, where it's like the cars fly in Superman, so you think by this point they'd be flying in Gotham City. But like, you're right. I mean, they built this epic new city and it's basically Neo Gotham. So technically a lot of the stories that we know about could have happened because like they could have had no man's land, and Neo Gotham's built on top of old Gotham. There's a lot of Gotham history we never learn, like what happened to Jim Gordon. And clearly Barbara doesn't get shot, or she knew 52 gets shot where she goes to South America and has an operation. But like the world building is awesome to the point that before they did Batman Begins, they were trying to figure out a live action Batman Beyond, and they scrapped it because the budget would have been blown out just building that world, because we weren't yet into like CGI the way we are now, and this is before really even like the Matrix had really taken the world by storm. So it's like, okay, we could do a bullet time scene, but like they didn't have the technology available to them to really capture what they had done in animation.
That is true. Yeah, it's interesting because the showrunners were interviewed at one point when there was this whole, hey, what if they made a live action movie? Would you be on board? They're like, no, we want to make an animated movie. We created this in an animated world, and they're trying to take that and just build on it for live action. It's just like, no, it's all ready. Like, just let us do it, which they eventually get to, like you say, in maybe an edited form. But I do want to mention very specifically in the animation also, one thing that I love is every time that Batman, Terry McGinnis is in the cockpit of his Batmobile, essentially, it's all red lighting in there. And again, his suit is completely black with a red bat symbol, like just some red accents. I mean, you would think it's very hard to emote with that, but it is so moody and awesome, and they are always choosing different angles in the cockpit to show him. I'm just like, how is this possible? Because he's in it so often. It's like Michael Knight in Kit. Like, how many different ways can you really shoot it? But they do it. They find
right. They're not using B-roll and stock footage like every time. That's the budget right there,
Yeah.
But
it's
no,
really cool.
I like the supporting characters because he really does build his own Bat family, from like his little brother Matt, where like, oh, could he maybe one day be a Robin? To his friend Max, who has the exact color palette of a Robin.
Oh, so we should say she's voiced by Cree Summer,
Yes.
In every animated series of this time, you had to have Cree Summer. But I was just like, she looks also like the Bumblebee character. You know what I'm saying? Like there's this superhero girl who ends up in other animated projects in the future. But yeah, I just kept waiting. I'm like, she's in this series.
Yes.
She's a super genius that figures out his identity, but she doesn't evolve. Nothing happens with her. She's just always there for him to talk to about a case.
I was so waiting for it, and I've never seen anything to imply that's where they were going, but it's like Barbara Gordon didn't become Oracle in this situation. So like Max kind of fills the guy in the chair role, and like the color palette, you know what I mean? It's like, it's right there. It's the way like Robin's suit is the Flying Grayson's costume. It's right there, and they just never do it. But like, even from his dumb girlfriend Dana, I hate Dana. Like, I really do.
Well, I think that's why they brought in Max, because they're like, Dana's no help. She's like Lauren Tom, who is on Futurama. If you know Amy on Futurama, same actress.
Right. But he just builds this world when we get the Justice League Unlimited showing up, but also when we start seeing the people from the past, because the producers lied to us. There are quite a few returns in this series, and I love every one of them. They don't waste any of them. Like, if somebody is brought back, with the exception of maybe Harley, but it's still like a wink kind of to the audience. But like with everyone else who's brought back, it is with a purpose and not just, hey, why don't we bring back X?
Yeah, I mean, we should mention. So for the first one, I believe, is Mr. Freeze comes back, and he is just a head in a jar. Speaking of Futurama, right? And he's been preserved. Basically, they want to use him as an experiment to be like, could you build a synthetic body and could you bring somebody back to life and whatever? And so they do, but it's such an interesting story because he wants to atone for his sins, basically. He's saying, like, I was angry, I was grieving, and I made all these bad choices. So he's trying to make good, but the world won't let him. So then he becomes evil again because they try to kill him off and all this stuff. And so it's really interesting. Like, Batman tried to give this guy a chance at redemption, but he's now gone over the deep end again, and he gets a cool new costume and all this stuff. So like it was a really clever way to do it, as opposed to just be like, oh yeah, here's a new Mr. Freeze of the future.
Plus, there was a precedent for it because in the new Batman Adventures, that's where he develops the ability to remove his head, basically. Like, we learn in those episodes, he's the head in the jar with spider legs. Like, the figure can even do it. So it's like, oh, he's still just a head in a jar. Do you know who else we see?
Doesn't Bane come back at a certain point?
Yep, and the venom has had like a bad effect on him, so he's all shriveled up at this point because he's gotten used to it basically, and it does nothing for him anymore.
But it is a great group of villains. We should say that. Paul
That's
Dini
where I was
says,
going next.
Yeah, he's like, he wants new villains. And the Rogues Gallery for Batman Beyond, again, aside from a few nods here and there in the Joker gang, like Ink. Ink is this returning character. She keeps coming back over and over again, but she's in like the first episode after the pilot, right? So tell us about this character. She's pretty cool.
She's basically like, she's his Catwoman. Although there's no like real romance angle, that's with the Royal Flush Gang. But like with Ink, she's a burglar, but she can blend into shadows. She can kind of like shapeshift. I don't want to say she fell into a vat of acid. That's way too Batman. But like it was a scientific like accident, which was probably the fault of Wayne Powers. So like she can shapeshift, but she's ultimately just like purple and black. She kind of has like a femme fatale face, but her body's like malleable. And it seems like she's one of those characters who really has to work hard to like stay corporeal. You know, like if she's not concentrating or working at it, she's just gonna dissipate. But like she constantly thwarts him because she's just like, if you can hide in shadows, Gotham City is heaven to you.
Yeah, well, and even at one point, she ends up hiding on the Batmobile when he goes back to the Batcave, and then she trashes the Batcave. I really thought they were going to use that to rebuild a futuristic Batcave, but that doesn't really come up in a big way. Like, it's weird. It's like she like pushes over the giant penny and like all the artifacts, and there she's smashing all the old costumes that are on display, and you're just like, wait a minute, you know, like, so I really thought that was going somewhere. But yeah, but it's just cool that they don't just do one-off characters. I mean, they do plenty of times, but like there's a group of them that continue to return, and Ink is definitely, you know, from the beginning, one of those you can't forget because she's so cool. One of the other ones I wanted to mention, they in one of the interviews, Paul Dini says, yeah, we have a story that is reminiscent of a certain superhero team, and Wizard magazine like, oh, must be the Justice League, but it's not. It is this group that is like the Fantastic Four. This is again like, but they're like the first 5 episodes they're doing an homage to Marvel Comics, but it's basically like this group of people who are scientist explorer type people, and like one of them gets changed into like a lava rock monster. The female member is like vapor. And then the other guy, he can stretch, but it's more that he can turn himself flat. He's the 2D man. And then it's like they were betrayed essentially by their Reed Richards. Like he wanted to give them superpowers, which they eventually find out. But again, they go crazy wanting revenge, and Batman has to stop them. But so there's a lot of like just fun ideas that they get to play, especially in the 3rd season.
But we also have to mention Derek Powers because he provides like the crazy evil villain, but he also provides a Lex Luthor. And he's a villain to both Bruce and Terry because he killed Terry's dad, but he took Bruce's company. And he still has the Lex Luthorism of like, oh, the kryptonite ring took over his body. Well, like Derek Powers' chemical whatever takes over his body, and then he becomes like the glowing radioactive man known as Blight. And he's around for a while, and also like he's very important in the pilot. But just I like that whole thing of like he's a shared villain between Terry and Bruce.
Yeah, he is really interesting. And they don't find out that Derek Powers is Blight. Like, Blight keeps popping up throughout the first season. And then at the very end of the season, he just can't control himself anymore. And he's revealed. Bruce Wayne sees him in a board meeting because Bruce kind of starts getting more involved again with his corporation. But like the character design is so cool because he's a skeleton with glowing green body, which there's a character in comics right now called Geiger, who I buy his comics. He looks exactly the same, except he wears a hood and a cape.
But for most of that season, he has like skin grafts and stuff. But when he gets mad, they keep burning off.
Well, it's like the Terminator 2 Play-Doh set thing,
yes,
where you put on the fake skin over your T-800.
What was that? The endoplasmic regenerator. But no, I remembered who we forgot, and is also one of my biggest cheers because it's my favorite episode, actually. I still quote it to this day. There is the episode where Talia returns.
Yes.
And she has like the secret to like the fountain of youth, and she gives it to Bruce. So this is the one time you get to see Bruce and Terry fight side by side against the League of Assassins, only for us to find out that it was Raish the whole time in Talia's body. And that's why I still call him Raish, because there is that one line where Terry calls him Roz and Talia goes, actually, father's name was Raish. But they realize at the end that like it's been Raish the whole time.
He's like, yeah, he creeps me out. She kissed me,
right, right.
So Bruce is like, yeah, but it's a really cool story because it's all about, Bruce again, he can't do anything, he's too old, so he accepts the effects of the Lazarus pit, but really Raish just wanted it so he could take over Bruce's body, so he set the whole thing up to make Bruce feel like he needed that. And so that is a really cool story, deals with a lot of continuity. Again, that's like third season, this series is almost over, so they do what they want.
And when they're fighting, the music is the score from the animated series days. It's actually the theme from when it becomes the Adventures of Batman and Robin, which is like season 2 of the animated series. But it's so nice to hear that orchestral thing again when we've just been hearing like for this whole series.
Well, and I think, and I don't know if these are cheers or jeers for you, but I do want to give cheers to Will Friedle as Terry McGinnis, as our Batman. He is unrecognizable in his vocal performance because you're used to like the goofy voice he did as Eric on Boy Meets World, and that's where most people knew him from. And in this show, he is just like, I'm a cool guy. I just would never have known it was him. I wouldn't have made that connection. And so I like his performance in the show because he is, I should say, he's not asked to do a lot. He doesn't have a lot of range within the character, but he is a likable protagonist in the way he performs it because they don't write him as just like an extreme dude. Yeah, I know what life's about and I'm going to show you. Come on, guys. He's not like that at all. Like, he is introspective. He is willing to learn. He is a smart guy, but he also he has his problems and he's able to have, the heartbreak or the frustrations or whatever as well. So I think Will Friedle is a great actor in that way, and that he was able to maintain that for the 3 seasons. He doesn't ever get lazy in his performance.
I will definitely give you that. And also, this is early in his voice acting career. So around this era, it's like you've got this and you've got Kim Possible. And Kim Possible is closer to what Eric Matthews was, especially when he becomes a cartoon character in later seasons of Boy Meets World. But he has range here. However, Will Friedle has done nothing but animation since this show, and there have been a lot of times he's returned to the well on this voice. So it's like now when you hear it, you know who it is. is. But like here, I was very impressed. And like, hey, this is Eric Matthews. But now I'm just like, oh, he's doing the Terry McGinnis voice.
Yeah, and again, Kevin Conroy, there's really not much more you need to say. He played Batman for so long. It was awesome that he was given a new version of Batman to play, that he did have to play it older, that he did have to have a more gruff and weathered attitude in the performance, you know, like you were saying earlier. He's just like, he's been through some stuff, and you can feel that, like, because he is so hesitant so often to let Terry do certain things. He's just like, Terry, get out of there now. But yeah, so as the core cast, you know, as the two stars sharing the spotlight, it's written well and performed well. And I think that is a major plus, because if there had been like, we just want Kevin Conroy as Batman because this new kid sucks, I think it's very evenly matched on how they're written and what they are both given to do. Like, they share the responsibility of being Batman, even though, you know, as the series goes on, Bruce more and more is just like, Terry knows what he's doing. I trust this kid. Just like you were referencing this Justice League Unlimited team that comes in at a certain point, and they want Terry on their team, you know, as a member. And it's kind of interesting where, you know, Bruce doesn't put up a fight with that. He's like, well, I mean, he could be an asset, but it's up to him to decide. I never wanted to be a part of your team. I don't need to do that. But if that's Terry's choice, then fine, you know. And then they work together to solve a mystery of a mole inside the team who was up to no good. It's a very cool dynamic that they share. And I'm grateful that they were able to find that balance in the show, because it very easily could have just been like annoying kid and like disgruntled old guy mentor, you know.
Or it could have been like really Back to the Future, you know, just like make Bruce whacked out and make like Terry second guess everything Bruce tells, you know, like it could have gone any direction, really.
Yeah. So lots to cheer about. But, you know, not every show is perfect, even in the future. So let's check out our cheers.
Boo! Boo! So this is a jeer I had while the show was on, but it made good on it. And I was saying earlier, we're like, I don't like future depictions of current like heroes and franchises because I want to know what happened, and they can't. Like, story, what, you can't do that. Like, it paints them into a corner. You can't say something like, oh yeah, that was the day Spider-Man got hit by that dump truck, you know. Like, it's always something vague. It's like, well, most of Earth's heroes fell during the great age of war, and you're like, well, what brought that on? So it's the thing here where it's like, we meet the Joker's gang in the pilot, but at no point during the series do we understand why they exist. Are they related to the Joker? Are they an homage to the Joker? Like, what happened to the Joker? And you can't do Batman without referencing the Joker. And they felt that it was enough to tide us over of like, well, his presence is still felt through Gotham because of this gang. But it was like, they could be paid off by Derek Powers. So who was it that really was like, hey, there should be this like network of Gotham street gangs honoring the craziest SOB who ever walked the streets of the city, you know? So I hated that. Same thing I hated about Spider-Man 2099, because that was like our first glimpse, at least to me. Like, Marvel had done things like Days of Future Past and all these things, but this was Marvel like creating an imprint of like, this is the future of the Marvel Universe. They weren't even lying, saying like, this is a possible future or an alternate future. This is the future of the Marvel Universe. Like, what is it? It was like 105 years at that point, you know? And so you want to know what happened. And they were like, the same thing here. There was the Thor gangs, and they were like a cult that still worships Thor, but you never know what happened to Thor. So I still had that resentment going on with this show, whereas like they did make good on bringing back a lot of old things, but it always came down to, but what about the Joker? So when they finally gave us the movie, it was like, okay, well, I really don't have anything to rant about at this point. We finally know what happened. And also they did it at the end, which was good, because then it's also like, when you explain what happened to the Joker, where do you go after that? So like pacing wise and release wise, it was done correctly. I was just being impatient, but I had no reason to believe we would ever get it.
I mean, I can understand that, yeah, because ultimately they are just looking to the future. They're looking, what's our next story going to be? They're not going to focus on the past because I think they wanted to identify, no, this is the show. Like, don't worry about the old stuff anymore. We're trying to tell you. And they're successful at establishing that. However, they do go back to the well of similar stories over and over again. For example, there's a lot of stories involving nerdy kids who get access to something that is a device or a robot or whatever that stands up for them and they get their revenge. There's this one episode called Gollum, and this kid's getting picked on. So he gets a giant worker robot that comes out and smashes the bully's car. And then he gets fried, while he's in the battle, so that he has a psychic connection to the robot and it can do whatever he wants. Then there's an episode called Terry's Friend Dates a Robot, where there's this kid who wants to be popular and he ends up connecting with this guy who makes essentially sex bots. Like he has an underground, he's like, I can make you any girl you want. And so this kid buys himself a hot girlfriend robot, but she's super jealous and wants to kill any girl that starts getting interested in the kid. But at first he's like, oh, I'm getting revenge on the bullies because now I have a hot girl with me, and there's more of those. I mean, there are so many of those types of stories.
There's enough of them where they were writing with like Columbine updates in the background, because timeline wise, that's where we are.
Yeah.
So it's just like, what would a disgruntled high school student do today? And so you're right. There's a lot of that.
And there's also the other, like we talked about, they have a great new, rogues gallery of returning rogues, but the one-offs, most of them are just, again, guys in power suits. Okay, This guy's suit is based around sound. This guy's suit repels anything around him and protects him. It's just like, and it's all like industrial espionage stuff for the most part. And so it kind of gets a little repetitive when it's just like villain of the week, but it's such in the same mold that it gets less exciting. Now, I'm not saying that's every single episode back to back, but if you're watching a whole season, you start noticing that.
It's very Power Rangers, where it's like, today the gang joins the Flower Club. And then it's like, oh no, they're fighting the garden monster. It's very like, but there is a lot of industrial espionage because everybody works for Wayne Powers. It's taken over. This is a jeer. I don't even know if you can walk with me on this one. This is a jeer for the overall concept, and it's not even the fault of the series itself, but I have to ask you before I get into it. Are you familiar with the Justice League Unlimited episode known as Epilogue?
I have heard of it, but I haven't watched it. But I know that there's an infamous twist. There's a reveal.
So we've been talking lately across shows about Dwayne McDuffie projects that missed the mark. I guested with you guys on the Super Cinema show for Wizards, and we talked about All-Star Superman, and Dwayne McDuffie tried to synthesize 12 issues into 70 minutes. Well, this is another issue where it's almost like the Seinfeld finale, where it's so crushing, it taints the entire thing. I mean, I'll say spoiler alert, even though this was roughly 20 years ago at this point. The episode Epilogue of Justice League Unlimited is pretty much maybe the last episode, but we find out that Amanda Waller got some of Bruce Wayne's DNA, because I think the idea was that the world would always need a Batman. She didn't like him, but she respected him. And if I'm not mistaken, because it's been a while since I watched it, when Terry's father got a flu shot, Cadmus basically used that as an opportunity to inject Bruce's DNA into Mr. McGinnis, which would make it that somehow through some science that doesn't actually exist, Bruce is Terry's biological father. Epilogue is pretty much them like coming to that real, because like they didn't know. So at this point, this is like 10 years after Batman Beyond. Like that's when it takes place, but it flashes back to like Amanda Waller's present day plans and how it plays out. And it's like, it's a retcon basically. And it doesn't even stop there. So it basically means that every child Mr. McGinnis sired was Bruce's kid. So Bruce is technically the father of both Terry and Matt. Where it's just like, you didn't have to do this. This is like How I Met Your Mother that spends the whole last season of Ted with Robin just be like, oh, you know what? It's going to be this girl at the wedding. Or no, we're not going to end up together after all. Like, your mother was the girl at the wedding. She died. I'm back with Aunt Robin. You didn't have to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's too convenient and it's too silly. I will say, for me, the only other jeer that I have is the Terry character from the perspective of, yes, he does do some learning. They say he's a hothead and he sometimes acts impulsively or whatever, but he's also too cool from the beginning. And again, maybe it would have been too rote to have like a nerdy kid who has to like learn to be a hero or something, but I don't really see a lot of like growth and flaws. Like he's already a good athlete. He's already somebody who stands up for what he thinks is right and defends people getting picked on. He'll like face off against the Joker gang. That's how he ends up at Wayne Manor, essentially. Like he'll stand up to these people. So he's already a hero, and connecting with, Bruce Wayne just gives him a bat suit to let him do everything, which I guess is cool. But to me, I just kind of felt like, well, so he was always kind of a superhero. He lacked the super, and it feels like he's almost too cool. Like, is he relatable? But I do like him a lot, but the whole series, I was just like, it just feels like he doesn't have anywhere to go because he was great from the beginning.
He's a cool loner. Like, I think he learns to let people in because that wasn't a thing. But also, and I think we really need to, like, think about this, where, like, it reframed his heroism because he always did what was right, but he did it the wrong way. If you look at the pilot, it's that trope. Like, he and his dad have a falling out before his dad goes out and gets killed. It's not like this was a one-off. It seems like this is a pattern of behavior, but it's a misunderstanding. Terry's that guy who, like, he's telling the rest of the class to be quiet, but the teacher sees him. There's someone else speeding way faster, but the cops pulled him over. So it's really figuring out when to act and how best to act. And I think there's growth through that. Like, and they didn't go the way of, like, he wasn't Jason Todd. They didn't rehab a juvenile delinquent. Yeah. They rehabbed a guy who was a good guy but misunderstood. Maybe luck wasn't always on his side. So I think Bruce and that association helps realign his directives and his objectives, and that's who we end up with when the show is over. Like, I do see growth. And also, it's not really fair to bring this in, but in the comics, you see growth because the comics got to continue. Like, the comics aren't in mainstream DC, so the comics are still in this reality. So you get to see him grow. You get to see him fully join Justice League Unlimited, and like, where that takes him. I see a lot of growth in Terry. I couldn't have dealt with a Peter Parker situation. If anything, I'm closer to Officer Joseph Gordon-Levitt from Dark Knight Rises, because I will tell anyone who listens, that man was murdered his first night out on patrol. He had no training. He didn't have the like stomach or the drive for it. He just knew, well, Gotham needs a Batman, and I went to the academy. That dude was not ready. That's why there's no fourth movie. Everybody's like, awesome. No, it's supposed to be a trilogy. No, he was murdered so bad they needed a bucket to collect what was left of him.
But no, you make a very good point on Terry, and I think that is valid. It was just something that was in the back of my mind the whole time I was watching, but I think that is true. He has had to be taught how to use, his instincts and everything he was already focused on in the best time. So we come to this point then. Is there a way after 3 seasons to keep this going, to look to the future itself, what it could have been? So we're going to fly in as the show doctors. for me, it's a great show. The only concept that appealed to me, though, was I felt like we had kind of seen everything that a solo adventurer could do. And it had been made clear that, like he doesn't want to join this Justice League, but I felt like he needed a team. And we've got to this earlier. He's got this supporting cast. There's so many people that could have become superheroes also. So I would have wanted a futuristic Titans group. And I would have liked a fourth season to be Batman and friends, essentially. Like, I would have liked the Batman buddies, like, as silly as that sounds. But I want Max to become a hero. I would like Dana to get superpowers and have a weird dynamic who she's just like you said, she's useless, but can she grow into a role and actually be helpful? His brother should be a little bit older by now, and maybe he can have a cool power. So like, that's kind of what I want. I think it'd be important to have the bully kid who is was it Nelson? Seth Green voices him. And I think that's a great dynamic you could have introduced to it. Is like the former bully, he's like a Flash Thompson. Now he's going to come in and he's going to be like Venom. Like, Flash got to be Venom. This guy could be a hero and he can change his stripes. So I think that is the refresh that it needed, just like the new Batman Adventures brought Batgirl into it and Robin on a more regular basis. Like, it was about a Bat team as opposed to just Batman solo stuff. So that to me is what I would have done to make it more interesting. Because otherwise, I don't think I needed a fourth season, even though all 3 seasons are good. But I just think it would have been more of the same. And you have to add new excitement to it somehow.
Can I name your show?
Yes.
That's a perfect name for your show. Batman Beyond and the Bold.
Oh, there we go.
No, I like that. And I mean, I'm in a similar vein where it's like, my biggest issue with the show is that we never really get out of Gotham. And I want to see the rest of the DCU at this time. If Metropolis was the city of tomorrow during Superman, what does it look like now? I don't even know how you do this. I would also go the like Batman Beyond and the Bold or whatever, or Justice League Unlimited, which then screws them over for whatever they're going to call that series. But I say he does join the team. And we'll still get adventures with him, but then we get to explore the other members. I'd like to see Clark return to Metropolis, because that's not where he is when we find him. Like, he's given up that life. He's just Superman 24/7 and in hiding most of the time. So I would like to see that. I would like to see Warhawk deal with who his parents were. Because at this point, if we got another season and you're like, if they have 2 teams and they're starting the Justice League series, then audiences on Cartoon Network are being introduced to Jon Stewart and Hawk Girl. And so then, like, eventually there would be like the cross where it's like, oh, those 2 characters there are responsible for him here. I like that cross network synergy stuff going on. But also, like, if you join the Justice League, it's like joining the Avengers. There's a certain level of threat that requires you. And Terry hasn't had a lot of those, So it's like, if we want to see growth or see him like evolve, he needs to deal with world-ending threats. It's time to graduate to the Justice League, and now we can see like Starro Beyond or something like that. That kicks it up a notch.
I would agree. I think that is important because, yeah, like, again, you can only fight street level villains for so long until it gets repetitive or until it feels like you're just spinning your wheels now. You could be doing greater good, especially when he has access to Bruce Wayne money and tech and all that stuff. Like, why aren't you guys figuring out actual, not reacting, but acting and making a difference in the world? And then there could be results that come from that. Like, oh, we tried to police this thing and now we're getting in trouble or whatever,
And you can just do more world building because, I mean, there are other future heroes. They're doing Batman Beyond Static crossover because Static will grow up to be an adult hero. So it's like dealing with that kind of deal. There's a comic recently from DC called The Outsiders, which wasn't like any incarnation before. Like, historically, The Outsiders is the team of like randos that Batman puts together when he gets angry at the Justice League, and they're all just cannon.
People like that.
They're all just cannon fodder. But this series, this incarnation was secretly planetary, which is like the old DC Wildstorm team that knew about multiple realities and multiple universes and multiple timelines. But this time it was run by like Lucius Fox's son, Derek Fox, and things like that. So it's like they are now the organization in the chair, not just the man in the chair, the organization in the chair. And we see a flash forward to the future where they are basically Oracle to Terry now. You know, so it's like seeing things like that. So if it's just like, hey, there's this, they wouldn't have had this then, but just like, hey, there's this organization, or maybe there is a separate Oracle, since we know Barbara doesn't become that. So it's like you could use these old names in new ways and like continue to build your world. You get up to 5 seasons on that. I mean, that The Batman that nobody talks about, that got 5 seasons and it did world building. You know, like by the end, there's a Justice League. But when it starts, he's just a playboy who doesn't know if he even wants to do this. So that was expert world building that just nobody talks about because it fell in that gap between Batman Beyond and then like, well, what else are we going to do with this character? He would graduate to the Justice League and start dealing with actual threats. The threats that weren't attached to anything Derek Powers was responsible for.
Definitely, I think it's good to break out of that into a larger world. I do want to add one last cheer as we close out here. I know you said you missed the cape, but for me, the Batman Beyond costume is the best Batman costume ever. It is perfect for me. If you like the old 60s Batmobile, it's like they took that and turned it into a costume, and it is amazing. I just want to go out
no
on
one asked
debate.
Like, I don't even have a counter. I just know in my soul that's the like, I don't even have an example. I'm like Kingdom Come, Adam West. Like there's so many better passes, but this one grew on me.
If in regular continuity, DC, for whatever reason, said this is Batman's look now, I wouldn't bat an eye. I'd be like, yes, I understand. That's why the character is stuck around, I also feel, is the design is so good. He has endured. Up to a couple years ago, they were talking about a Batman Beyond movie. They want to do something because he looks cool. And I think that is fair.
He looks cool, but I'm like, Thrill Killer Batman, Kingdom Come Batman. Like, I'm just like all these amazing suits, and you want to settle on this one.
Well, and here's the thing. If you have felt a little bit lost here and there, if you're a TV fan and you've heard us referencing comic book stories and all this lore from the history of DC Comics, you can actually go beyond Remember That Show now, because Will has become an official co-host of Wizards, the podcast guide to comics. So now every month you can get, I was going to say double, but it's beyond double. You could just maximize your experience of Adam and Will talking about geeky stuff. Get your TV, get your comic books. So this is a very fun way that we get to hit on all sorts of nostalgia and pop culture each week as we bring you our coverage of an issue of Wizard magazine and report on the news of the day. Now, currently you can go to wizardscomics.com or just find your favorite podcast app. We have 350 episodes where we covered all the comics news of the 90s, and now we're in the 2000s.
Well, you know, like I just learned we have a listener who's like 20 years old. So maybe, what is Wizard?
Yo, we should explain that. If you don't know, Wizard, the guide to comics, eventually Wizard, the comics magazine, was for 20 years, although really maybe just for, 15 years, it was the go-to source for comic book information in a pre-internet world. It was a monthly magazine that had a price guide for your comic books, but it also had interviews with the comic book creators. It had previews of new and upcoming series that were going to debut, but also had a lot of humor and fun and jokes. It was known for its attitude and the way it presented all that information. So it was very popular for its time until magazines became not a thing anymore. And so that's why as we go through each issue, it is a touchstone of the pop culture of the era, but it's also from the source that was most trusted, at least most read. Was it always the most accurate? Who knows? But it was the most fun for people out there. And that's why it is something that's been able to endure. We've been recording those episodes for 6 years now. And Will is coming in, and we have many more years ahead of us. It is far from over. There was over 200 issues of Wizard Magazine, plus bonus issues and everything else they did over there.
So if your favorite Ninja Turtle is Raphael, you'll love Wizard Magazine. That's the end of this episode, but we'll be back sooner than you think with an extra treat for the Halloween season as we discuss the frighteningly unfunny syndicated sitcom What a Dummy from 1991. Until next time, we're changing the channel.
This has been a presentation of Geekster Media.